Hey guys, and welcome back to part 3 of the senses. I'm going to try and keep it shorter today. All we're really going to be covering is the structure of the ear. Now, when I say that, we're not necessarily going to be talking about how it works. We're just going to be looking at the anatomy of it. Tomorrow we're going to look more at the physiology. But first, before we get started on our notes or after you do these notes, it really doesn't matter when you do it. I would just like you to watch this video. Um, this man that you see here uh, is completely blind, 100% blind. Uh, but he walks around on his own and he teaches people how to do that, how to be able to see things through hearing in their house. And what's happened is he's lost his eyes, and so now he's using another sense to compensate for that. That sense that he's using is his hearing. Very similar to how like a bat will use sonar, and he's going to explain how he does it in this video. It's just something that I found really interesting, and if we were in class, I'd be sharing it with you guys. So that's there for you to check out, and the link's going to be in the description. So getting started here, first of all, we see our ear. It's not just for hearing, all right? As we're going to be looking at more so tomorrow, our ear also helps us with our sense of balance. Remember we talked about how special senses have special organs. Equilibrium is no different. And we're actually going to find out that it's in our ears that help us with our balance and things like that. And we're even going to see how sometimes that's why, like, if music is too loud or the bass is too low, you can actually get sick from those sounds. We're going to be looking at something about that tomorrow. Uh, but again, the two senses that you're going to find in the ear, obviously hearing, but also equilibrium, how we keep our balance, how we understand when we're upright or upside down. All right, the structure of the ear. We divide the ear into three parts: the external, middle, and inner. Pretty self-explanatory. The external is the outer ear. The middle ear is what's known as the tympanic cavity or the tympanic cavity, and we'll look at what that means later on. And last but not least, the bony labyrinth. And if you don't know what a labyrinth is, it's like a maze. And as we're going to see, that's basically what this is. It's like a bony maze because, believe it or not, you do have tiny little bones inside your skull. They're the smallest bones of the body. But we're going to look at that in just a second. First off, just our basic structure. We have the external outer ear, the middle ear, and the internal ear. This is how it's divided. And we're going to go structure by structure and see how all this is laid out, starting with the external ear. Again, this video is here. This video is not necessarily something that's mandatory. I just put this video here in our slideshow though, because sometimes he can honestly explain these things a lot better than I can. So I just put these videos here for you from time to time to get a different perspective, somebody else explaining it to you. Maybe they'll explain it a little bit better. In this video, he will go into how these senses work. We're not necessarily going to be covering that till tomorrow. We're going to be seeing how these structures work and how the sound waves are perceived. But if you want to get a head start, or if you just want to hear somebody else talk about it, feel free to watch this video and then continue with your notes. All right, so the external ear, in other words, the outer ear, this does not have anything to do with our balance. This is just for hearing only. And what you might not be noticing on here is anything that resembles what we think of as an ear term-wise. What we think of when we think of an ear, and probably what you're picturing in your mind right now, if you're visualizing, if you're a visual learner like me, you have a picture of an ear in your mind. What you're thinking of isn't actually the ear, it's just the external structure of the ear known as the auricle or the pinna. All right, either one of those are the two different terms that are generally referred to as. But this auricle, it's only there to help channel sound. So sometimes you might see somebody who's hard of hearing, they'll put like their hand up to their ear, in other words, saying speak up, speak louder. Or they'll even have like a funnel that they put up to their ear to help them hear better. And the reason they're doing that is because their ear is trying to catch sound waves. They're trying to catch those vibrations going through the ear or through the air, so they can catch that, and then process it. And that's what our auricle does. Uh, Now, in some cases, not so much with us, but you think of something like an elephant that has really big ears. The auricle is not just going to be helping catch sound waves, it's also actually going to be helping get rid of heat. So, helping the animal cool off. That's another reason African elephants have such large ears. Now, it plays small roles like that for us, but it's not as important as its main job of just trying to get those sound waves to come into our ear. And once those sound waves do catch on to the auricle, they're going to travel through the external acoustic natus. In other words, the auditory canal. Uh, that's generally where, if you ever put a Q-tip in your ear or something like that, that's what we're talking about here. It's a narrow chamber and it even goes through the temporal bone. In other words, looking back at our diagram here, this is the temporal bone. This is inside your skull. All right, so here's the auricle, what we think of as being our ear. As it catches those sound waves, it's going to travel through the auditory canal, through the temporal bone, up to what's known as the tympanic membrane, aka your eardrum. All right, and so as that sound is traveling through here, we can see that this layer is covered with skin, and it's also covered with a specific type of gland, the ceruminous gland, or the wax glands. All right, now a lot of people might be wondering, why do we have earwax? What's the importance of earwax? And should we be cleaning it out? In the video description, I'll put a link to an interesting article I found about 3 reasons you shouldn't take out your earwax. Just if you're extremely bored and want to read about your earwax, it's there for you. But I'll just tell you straight up right now, our earwax does serve a purpose, all right? Everything that our bodies are designed for has a purpose to it, including our earwax. Very similar to when we think of how the oils that our skin produces are there to protect our bodies, earwax does the same thing. It traps particles that might be coming into the ear canal, and it's even a deterrent for some insects, actually. And so those are just some of the reasons that we have that earwax. And it also is, in some ways, self-cleaning and helps kind of get all that dirt that's in the ear out, actually. So we don't necessarily need to use Q-tips in our ears, specifically when it can injure or damage this tympanic membrane. If you put a Q-tip in too far, all right, notice this really isn't very far, you put that Q-tip in there, you're going to hit that tympanic membrane, and that's really going to hurt. And there's a reason it's going to hurt, because it's this tympanic membrane that's going to be pushing on these little things right here that are actually the smallest bones in our body to help us produce that sound. Now, once the sound waves travel through here and start pushing on that tympanic membrane, it's not anything our brain can process yet. Has to go through the middle ear and the inner ear for that to happen. And so let's go ahead, we're going to start looking at the middle ear now. All right, so the middle ear, 2 tubes are associated with it. When we say 2 tubes, I think what they're trying to relate here is the sense that you just have this canal that's associated with it. Right in here, they're considering that some type of tubing, but mainly the main tube we're going to be talking about is this long auditory tube, the pharyngotympanic tube, and that's a mouthful. Pharynx, think of your throat, because that's actually what this is. And so the auditory tube is connecting that middle ear with your throat. This is why sometimes when you yawn or when you're eating, your ears might pop, because it's trying to restabilize the pressure within your middle ear. Otherwise, again, like it says, it's collapsed. If you have ever gone in a plane or you've been driving through the mountains, even if you're just going through like the Smoky Mountains or maybe the Rocky Mountains or just anywhere where you're going to feel a change in sea level, or you're going to be higher in elevation, there's going to be a pressure change in the air. And when you feel that popping in your ear, it's this little auditory tube that is opening up to release that pressure that built up in your ear. That way, there's an equal pressure on the inside of your ear and an equal pressure on the outside of your ear. In other words, what's going on is whether you realize it or not, we're under pressure. All right, go ahead and take your hand right now and just kind of like wave it through the air. All right, I can't see if you're doing it. I'm doing it right now, but I can't see if you're doing it, and I'm assuming that you're doing it, or at least you did it. All right, you can feel the air moving in between your hands. That air has mass, that air has pressure to it. All right, and so think about our Earth's atmosphere. It helps us breathe and everything. Likewise, all that pressure from all that air, gravity is pushing it down on us, and so we feel that pressure. When we go higher in elevation, we're not going to be feeling as much pressure, and so the pressure on the outside of our ear is going to change. Meanwhile, we have all this built up pressure in here. And for this to work properly, the pressure has to be the same on this side as on this side. And here's why. Think of a balloon. All right, think of your inner ears being, or your middle ears being a balloon. Now let's say I inflate this balloon. So I blow it up, and I'm blowing it up, and I'm blowing it up. All right. All of a sudden, if I fill this with lots of air, it's going to put pressure on this tympanic membrane. And so then when this tympanic membrane is trying to push in on all these bones right here, it's not going to be able to, because the pressure is different. We have a higher pressure in here now because we put all that air in there. So eventually, from time to time, you'll get that ear pop, where this auditory canal will open, restabilizing the pressure so we can hear properly. So that's what's going on in our middle ear. Now, this middle ear is divided into 3 different bones or ossicles. All right, we're on number 14 in our notes, bones of the middle ear. So these 3 bones include the malleus, the incus, and the stapes. Those are the fancy Latin ones. You can also remember that they're named based off their shape: the hammer, the anvil, and the stirrup. All right. An anvil, what we're talking about, think of it in correlation with the hammer. If you've ever seen, like in some movie or TV show where like maybe there's a blacksmith and he's forging something, maybe he's making a sword or armor, and you see him hitting a hammer and these sparks are flying up. What he's using is, yes, he's hitting the metal there, but the metal is sitting on top of an anvil. That's what we're talking about. And so this hammer is going to hit the anvil. That anvil then is going to bounce off the stirrup, and that stirrup then is going to be tapping on the inner ear. So right down here where it says vibrations from the eardrum, what it's talking about is, so as that tympanic membrane hits this hammer, that hammer is going to hit the anvil. As that anvil hits the stirrup, that stirrup hits the inner ear, and then it's within our inner ear that we're actually going to process these vibrations as sound. All right, and so what's going on here, I sometimes like to think of it as like Morse code. This little video just kind of gives you a fun little fact about Morse code. Was invented in this time, became obsolete then. But nonetheless, I use this video just because I kind of think of like this person's hand connected to the machine as being like the bones of the middle ear. You have your hammer that's hitting the anvil, and then that anvil will hit the stapes, and that stapes is going to send the message to the inner ear. That's how our hearing works in a nutshell. The final video that I would like you guys to watch today is this 3-minute video that just kind of shows you from like a microscopic level how that's all actually working, how all three bones are working, how that pressure from the tympanic membrane is going to hit that hammer, how that hammer then hits the anvil, and then how that anvil sends the message to the stirrup. If you've ever been watching a movie or in a video game where there's like an action sequence where something like a large explosion goes off beside somebody, and all of a sudden it's kind of like you don't hear anything but this little high-pitched ringing, and then their hearing comes back, this video explains what's going on there. It's actually a way to protect our ears, and so I'm not going to say any more about it, just going to let you watch the video. Last but not least, once that gets to the stapes and it touches the inner ear, that's where it's processed. And this is also where our sense of balance, the organ for balance, is located. So it's made up of two different parts, this bony labyrinth. We have what's known as the cochlea. That's not Coachella, it's cochlea. This actually means like a snail, that's what it's talking about. And the semicircular canals. All right, these are the two parts that are going to be doing hearing and balance. The cochlea is what's going to be responsible for your hearing, and it's the semicircular canals, in some senses, that are going to be helping us with that balance. That's why sometimes you'll hear people talking about cochlear implants, right? And what happens is they'll actually go through and they'll put implants into the cochlea to help with processing that sound that's coming through, and that's what's going on there. And so again, this is what we're talking about. This little thing right here that looks like a snail shell, that's the cochlea. And that's actually why it's called the cochlea, meaning snail. And then our semicircular, you'll notice they look like a semicircle, part circle, and there are little canals, hence their name, semicircular canals. So, in a nutshell, that's our ear. Our ear is comprised of three main sections: the external outer ear, which sound waves come through the auricle, travel through the auditory canal here, and then to the tympanic membrane, where that tympanic membrane is going to divide it to the middle ear. That middle ear is comprised of the three smallest bones in the human body: the hammer, anvil, and stirrup, or the malleus, incus, and stapes. And then that stapes is going to be tapping onto the third and final part of our ear, the internal inner ear, which is comprised of the cochlea and the semicircular canals. So I hope this helps you out. If you have any questions, please feel free to message them to me if there's anything that didn't seem clear, or if there's anything that you're curious about, maybe that this video made you think about. Again, I miss having our discussions in class, so if you have any of those things that you are interested in, want to know more about this, please let me know. And until tomorrow, I'll talk to you guys later.